Hello everyone, my name is Roxy Darlin. Welcome to my channel. In this video, I'll be turning this sketch into a wall-mounted sculpture. If you saw the thumbnail, you will have noticed that I did use acrylic paint to look like blood in the eyes. So if that is going to upset you, this video is not going to be for you. To start this piece off, I am using a resin face sculpt that I poured using a silicone mold from a previous video. I'll leave links to that in the description below. But if you don't want to sculpt and mold your own face, they do have silicone molds of faces on Amazon and Etsy. So that would be a great starter. Just a square wooden plaque, and then I'm going to be making a lot of eyes, and so I also used a silicone eye mold. I am going to use air dry clay for the eyes because I'm making a whole bunch of them all the same size, and so instead of having to wait for resin to cure, I can just press these into the mold, cut off the excess, and then just pop it out of the mold and let them dry. Because I think I made like 10 of them. I'm not going to use all 10, but I have some that are just, you know, in case I F something up, because that's been done before. After the base of the eyes have hardened, I used some poster putty to attach it to a little wooden stick to help me work with it easier, but I'm just going to use a little bit of water to help the clay stick, and I'm going to put some fresh clay in the curvature of the eye, and then I'm going to use a ball stylus to press excess clay out. I'm just creating a little concave reservoir so I can start with a craft blade and start carving in the lines for the iris. I try to make them in a perfect like little starburst of a pattern, but my hand, it just does what it wants sometimes. So I'm trying my best to keep it perfectly circular. And then I go in the edges and I'm just slightly pushing the clay towards the center just a little bit with the back of the blade. Here's a close-up. I'm just slightly pushing it in, because if you look at an eye, it's kind of like layers of little crevices. And with this air dry clay, I can just get any of the lumps and bumps out with some water and just smooth everything out. And then once I get it where I want it, I just start with my ball stylus and press in to create the pupil. And this is what they kind of look like after they dry. Now it's time to start painting the irises. I'm going to use quinacridone magenta only because I'm using so many reds in this piece. I'm trying to balance out my blue reds with my orange reds. And to paint the irises, I'm adding a little bit of water, and then I'm pressing the acrylic into the middle and letting that water suck the pigment into the crevices. I'll do another example so you can kind of get a better idea of what I'm doing. Yeah. So add a little water, not too much, and then I am letting the water pull that pigment into the little reservoirs. And then once I get it to where I want it, I start adding the pupils, and the pupils are just seed beads, little glass beads that are black. Or you can paint it black, and of course I dropped something. Thank you, hands. Let this be a lesson. If you have crap hands, you can still make art. You just drop stuff a lot. So now I'm using UV resin to start making a dome on the top of the eyes. And then once I get the dome up, I'm going to add a lot of veins to the eyes. These eyes were meant to be really creepy because this piece was supposed to be for Halloween, but life happened, and but I think this piece kind of suits how a lot of people are feeling at the end of 2024, just bloodshot eyes. So yeah, this is what they're looking like, creepy and cool at the same time. These are the first eyes I ever sculpted, and I'm kind of obsessed now. So yeah, here's a close-up. All right, so this is where we are, and this is where we're headed. So this is showing me where I want to lay the eyes out and the head. And I changed the face sculpt a little bit because I didn't like how far back the chin was, or how high the brow bone was. So I just add a little epoxy sculpt to that. But before I start adhering things to the wooden plaque, I'm going to add a layer of primer with gesso, and then I'm going to add a few layers of a gray-blue acrylic paint. I do paint over it with gesso a little bit later, but I do end up with the same grayish blue background in the end. I'm using epoxy sculpt to bezel set those eyes on really well, you know, just extra adhesion. I was originally going to sculpt all the hair with epoxy sculpt, but I just like the air dry clay so much better. I prefer using air dry clay when I can. So to start the face, I did add some gesso primer to the face, and now I'm going in to blush and contour. Like I said earlier, I'm going to be using a ton of different reds in this piece, so I'm just going to slowly start building up with pink and red for her eyes, lips, and chin. In between each layer, I do spray it with the matte Mr. Super Clear varnish, and I just slowly build that up. You'll see me in a second grab the white watercolor pencil to try to whiten the eyes. I do give up on that and use gouache. And then I started sketching in the pupils, irises, and I end up using gouache with that. I'm adding a little shade with some black pan pastels. I end up hating the pupils, and so you'll see me remove them after this clip. I just dab a Q-tip in some water and remove them expeditiously because ew. I like them much better after I removed them, and then I start giving them a little cloudiness with the white chalk pastels, and I'm beginning to like the piece again. Just kidding. I hate using this black, and so I will abandon using the black as the shading, and I will use a pale gray later on. For those of you who get squeamish with blood color, might be when you want to tap out, because I do start filling in the eyes with a much more true blood color. Yeah, so if you tap out, goodbye, thank you for hanging out, but things are gonna get creepy because I like creepy. Once I get the eyes looking like I want them, I spray them with Mr. Super Clear because it was gouache, and now I'm adding drop shadows with the black pan pastels. And then I also added a little bit of shadow to indicate the eyebrows, but I want them to look white, and so I start going in with my watercolor pencil just to establish like a faint guideline, and then I do enhance the stark whiteness of it with gouache later on in the video. I ended up using a lot of gouache in painting this face, mainly because I think I ended up liking gouache more than the watercolor pencils, because even though the watercolor pencils don't have any wax in them, they do get waxy at some point, and the gouache I can easily erase with a slightly damp Q-tip, and I just feel like I have more control over it, if that makes sense. But everybody gets to use whatever they want because art supplies are amazing and all artists are different. Now for the eyelashes, this is my first time painting eyelashes. In the past I have used the watercolor pencils. I was always scared to paint them on. I didn't think I would get the line fine enough, but I really like this so much better. The gouache, you can just get just such a rich, stark white, and I can't do that with the watercolor pencils. Here I'm adding the catch lights, and I ended up painting 3 of them. I think I was just excited and just adding a whole bunch of crap, but I end up painting over them and only ended up with 1 catch light in the end. But I came to a stopping point with the face up, and I decided to just add a little gesso, and because I was afraid that the clay wouldn't adhere to the acrylic paint for the backdrop area. So I added gesso, and now I'm using water as glue, and I'm just going to start going in and sculpting the hair with the Ladal clay. I now understand why so many like ball joint doll artists use this clay to sculpt their dolls, because it's my new favorite clay actually. So I'm just starting in with like what I'm considering as background hair. I'm going to do layers. So the first layer, I'm just trying to cover the background and press the clay down and get some flowing hair action going on. And then as the clay dries, I will start adding more height and detail with the hair. And I was gonna do all the hair at once and let it dry, but it turns out that when I'm not paying attention and I'm really concentrating on sculpting an area, I'll accidentally stick my thumb in a area I just sculpted. So what I realized is it's best to just do it in sections and let it dry. And yeah, so this is just like first area, and so I'm gonna do around and just do the bottom part of the eye, because if you look at the way eyes are like sculpted, usually the bottom lid is slightly overlapped by the top lid, and so I was just kind of mimicking that. And like I said, just doing background hair, no details at the moment. And I'm having a lot of fun just going with the flow and just making it up as I go. I've never really sculpted this much hair before, and I'm obsessed. I think I found my new favorite is sculpting eyes and hair. So you might be getting a lot of weird sculptures from me in the future, not because of any specific subject matter, but only because I really enjoy sculpting eyes and hair. And I mean, I think a lot of artists do that. Like, it's not like they have some people are very conceptual artists. Me, I just enjoy working with art supplies and zoning out and listening to music and audiobooks, hanging out with my cat. She's usually at my feet, and just zoning out and sculpting stuff. So while that's drying, I'm going to start giving her some hair. I'm going to make it kind of tall, because when I sculpted this originally, I kind of gave her a short forehead. And so I'm going to make it up by giving her some tall hair. And right now it's looking like a really bad toupee. So, yeah. But, yeah, in between these toupee layers, I am going to add some detail, let it dry, and then I'm just going to start adding some height. Um, because I wanted her to have like hair that kind of arches and then cascades down. And I originally had it to where it was just a regular hairline, and then I decided no, I want her to have a widow's peak. So you'll see me sculpting that in a little bit. But yeah, I'm just doing this the same way I did the other hair. I start off with a base shape, I press it all down, and then I start going in and adding detail. Now that the top of her head is sculpted, I'm going to let her dry, and I'm going to grab this like carving tool. I think it's for, it doesn't matter what it's for, but I carved some little rivets, divots into this piece, and I also sanded the back of her head. And so now it's time to adhere it. I used this stuff because it's good for wood and plastic, and it's clear. I am not sponsored by Gorilla Glue, but I wouldn't be mad if they wanted to sponsor me. Hey, Gorilla Glue, how's it going? Once that glue cured, I went in and filled in any gaps with the same air dry clay before I start going in and sculpting her neck, shoulders, and décolleté. Once I got the base of it down, I did go and with a wet brush and smooth everything down. And now I'm going to start with the little, the only thing I've ever heard these called were 11s, but I know that's not the technical term, but I just go in with a little snake of clay and start pressing it down. And then I almost completely blur it out because I just want a hint of the little 11s. And then once I get those sculpted, I use the same technique to go in and create some clavicles. A lot of this is going to get covered by hair, but just in case, I want everything to look natural, as natural as this lady can look. I mean, now to start giving her the long, flowy detail hair. And I'm only going to show you one, and then I'm going to do the rest off screen. But I'm basically just going in with a little snake of clay, pressing it down, and then I'm basically just going literally with the flow of the hair and adding just the curves and everything just intuitively. I'm not looking at my sketch or anything, which I probably should have because I ended up adding more hair, and because I was going to paint her a necklace, but I kind of went wild with the hair, so she didn't get any jewelry, and that's very strange for me. I like jewelry, but this lady has none, and that's okay. Not everybody has to have jewelry all the time. Once all her clay is dried, I'm going to add gesso to everything, and then I'm going to paint it with some white acrylic before I go in and start adding shades with pan pastels. I did get a very neutral pale gray for the shading because I did not like the stark black for shading. And then I'm going to, the shading around the eyes is going to be pink and red. I did cover the eyes with a little bit of washi tape just so I don't, when I spray it with Mr. Super Clear in between the layers of pan pastels, I don't mess up the eyes in any way. I am concentrating a lot of the shading around her head just to make it look like the hair goes further back in space than how it is now. I just want to add depth. And I, because the clay is porous, and a lot of people use the chalk pastels on plastics and paper. Well, because I'm using clay, it doesn't get as smooth and it's looking a little dirty in the shading areas. So once I get everything colored the way I want it, I go back over everything with white and translucent chalk pastels to give it a smoother, more powdery look. And I really like that. I'm sure some people would break out the airbrush and airbrush all of this, but I don't enjoy working with an airbrush. I enjoy working with these pastels. After the eyeliner was added, this is me going back in and smoothing out all that gray with the white chalk pastels. And what's fascinating about these pastels is once you spray them with Mr. Super Clear, it does clear them a little bit. Like the white is not as stark white, and so that gray will peek through again. And yeah, it was just giving it more of a powdery look. And now I'm going in with regular resin to just make sure that the eyes are really wet looking. You can use UV resin. I just prefer this kind because it's less stinky. So yeah, you do you. And now it's time to gloss the eyes and lips and make these eyes look more cohesive with the sculpted eyes, and just make those lips just pop. This is my favorite part actually. And it's also the part where it's done. All right, and these are the final shots of what everything looks like. If you made it this far in the video, thank you. Thank you for putting up with my not so normal commentary because, well, I don't do anything normal. But if you got anything from this video, hit the like button, share, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. And I have more to come. So yeah, I will see y'all soon. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.